What is the story David Copperfield about? Plot overview. Now a grown man, David Copperfield tells the story of his youth. As a young boy, he lives happily with his mother and his nurse, Peggotty. His father died before he was born. Which Charles Dickens novel is the most autobiographical? David Copperfield. Autobiographical elements of David Copperfield. David Copperfield contains many autobiographical elements. At a surface level it is easy to notice that even the name of the main character, David Copperfield, has the inverted initials of its author, Charles Dickens. Who is Barkis David Copperfield? Mr. Barkis, fictional character, a stagecoach driver in the novel David Copperfield, 1849-50 by Charles Dickens. Barkis is persistent in his courtship of Clara Peggotty, Copperfield's childhood nurse, and is known for the hopeful often repeated phrase "Barkis is willing." Who was Uriah Heep? Uriah Heep is a fictional character created by Charles Dickens in his novel David Copperfield. Heep is one of the main antagonists of the novel. His character is notable for his cloying humility, obsequiousness, and insincerity, making frequent references to his own humbleness. What is the full title of David Copperfield? David Copperfield is the eighth novel by Charles Dickens. The novel's full title is The Personal History, Adventures, Experience and Observation of David Copperfield the Younger of Blunderstone, Rookery. It was first published as a serial in 1849-50, and as a book in 1850. Who is David Copperfield? David Copperfield, the narrator and protagonist of this veiled autobiography, based in part on the author himself. David's father, David, Sr., dies 6 months before he was born, and he further loses his mother when he is still a child. He is characterized in the book as having perseverance, but also emotional instability, which is an important point of the latter part of the book. After being adopted by his aunt Betsey Trotwood, he is called Trotwood Copperfield in deference to her wishes. Throughout the novel he goes by multiple names. The Peggotty family address him as Davy, James Steerforth nicknames him Daisy, Dora calls him Dodie, the Micawbers mostly address him by his last name, and his aunt and her circle refer to him as Trot. Who is Edward Murdstone? Edward Murdstone, the main antagonist of the first half of the novel. He is young David's cruel stepfather who beats him for falling behind in his studies. David reacts by biting Mr. Murdstone, who then sends him to Salem House, the private school owned by his friend Mr. Creakle. After David's mother dies, Mr. Murdstone sends him to work in his factory in London, where he has to clean wine bottles. He appears at Betsey Trotwood's house after David runs away. Mr. Murdstone appears to show signs of repentance when confronted by Copperfield's aunt about his treatment of Clara and David, but later in the book, we hear he has married another young woman and applied his old principles of firmness. Who is Mrs. Steerforth? Mrs. Steerforth, the wealthy widowed mother of James Steerforth. She dotes on her son to the point of being completely blind to his faults. When Steerforth disgraces his family and the Peggottys by running off with Emily, Mrs. Steerforth blames Emily for corrupting her son, rather than accept that James has disgraced an innocent girl. The news of her son's death destroys her and she never recovers from the shock. Who is Betsey Trotwood? Betsey Trotwood, David's eccentric and temperamental yet kind-hearted great-aunt. She becomes his guardian after he runs away from Grinby and Murdstone's warehouse in Blackfriars, London. She is present on the night of David's birth but leaves after hearing that Clara Copperfield's child is a boy instead of a girl, and is not seen until David is older and flees to her house in Dover from London. She is portrayed as affectionate towards David, and defends him and his late mother when Mr. Murdstone arrives to take custody of David. She confronts the man and rebukes him for his abuse of David and his mother, then threatens him and drives him off the premises. Universally believed to be a widow, she conceals the existence of her ne'er-do-well husband who constantly bleeds her for money. Thank you.